Oh, by the way, I'm Andrew, co-host here with Bobby. And yeah, so just use that Q&A. I expect that that will get some exercise today because Paige's interview is going to surely spark some people's questions. If you are watching the recorded version and you have questions, we'll talk later on about what her website is or how you can find her on Facebook or those different things because her story is really pretty inspirational. Bobby and I have known Paige for quite a while.
You've probably known her longer than I have.
Maybe. I don't remember. Did we ever go on were you on the 2019 tour page? I can't
Yes, I was.
remember. You went
But
on tour.
Andrew, I met you at when you and Michelle were dealers in Upper Midwest because I was at MQX Portland and
Mm,
also the Tacoma show that used to be out there, Innovations.
right.
I always
Well,
had to visit
I
those
think
shows.
I went to the last MQX show that was in Portland. So I think that probably would have been like 2012 or something.
Yep,
Um,
you were right across the aisle from us.
Yep.
I
Well,
remember.
you got the memory to beat mine. I've had a lot packed into those in between years.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, your story is really, really cool. And when we were on the Gammill Educational Cruise last week, I realized that a bunch of the shining stars that were there had been interviewed already on this podcast, but not Paige. And I said, Paige, would you be willing to be interviewed? And she said yes. And we've already got a comment from the studio audience. Wow, I can see at least six Gamels behind you. Thank you. That was my count as well. Paige corrected
Five.
me. She said there's only five. And her question was about how many employees do you have?
I have 12 employees at this point. For a number of years, it was just myself. And I was in my basement. And I got to a point where I could move out of the basement to a storefront. And then having an open door all the time, I couldn't leave. So I started hiring employees so I could go to lunch, basically, is how it started.
Well, before we get just full on into
Okay.
your story, we do want to adequately see you already know her, and you did not adequately introduce Paige.
Well, let's get started. You do it,
Okay.
Bobby.
So
Yeah.
Paige, whom I have known maybe 6 years since I've been here at Gamble. So Paige, tell us where you're located. Where is home for you?
I'm in Minnesota. I am just south of the Twin Cities area. I'm in a suburb. Currently, I am in a storefront in a strip center right off a major highway. So I've got a good location and I get walk-in traffic. I
Okay.
started in my home, but I was still in outer ring suburbs, so I was fairly close to population.
hmm And how long have you been long arming?
I have been quilting since I was 7, and I started long arming professionally in the year 2000.
hmm So 2000, so this would be 25 years then for
Yep.
you.
hmm
All right. Uh, what made you decide to get into long arm quilting?
Well, I had quit my corporate job to stay home with kids.
Okay.
And as cool as that was, I wanted something else. And my Aunt Alice said, "You can be a long arm quilter." And I didn't really know what that was. And she told me that people will pay you money to quilt their quilts, and you get this machine that it runs all over. And I went, "Oh, that sounds great." So my friend and I, Mary Reinhardt, went to a local show and we saw one of the original handy quilters that had rails that you taped to a table and then you put a carriage on it and you put your own sewing machine on it. So I had like 9 inches of sewing space and it was $600. And I thought, oh, Okay, I'm going to do this. So I bought the machine and I called my aunt and I said, I did it, I did it. And she goes, oh, no, no, no. I met this really nice man, Ken Gammill, and she bought my first long arm for me. Get
Wow.
me
Bought
started.
it for you. Wow.
Bought it for me. So that was how I got started. I was gifted a brand new, it was a classic plus. So it
Hmm.
had a stitch regulator.
Hmm.
Nice.
And that
That
was
was high
cool. But I
tech back
had,
then, wasn't it?
yeah, oh, that was the coolest thing
Well,
ever.
that was the state-of-the-art machine. As a matter of fact, to this day, it
Uh-huh.
still
Yeah.
knocks the pants off most of the machines that are out there.
Oh, hey,
Yeah.
it's still running. It's right over there. It's still
But
running.
it's had a change operation.
Yes, it has. It's had a few upgrades. Well, I got new hips. It got a Statler.
Uh-huh.
I don't think we're gonna have to ask her any questions.
So
She's
so
answering everything.
so I
I'll
was
just
going to
keep
ask you
talking.
this. So somebody had told you that there's a job opportunity for finishing quilts, which that was news to you at the time.
Yep.
But you had been a quilt top maker before then. Had you not brought your quilts to anybody to have them finished, or you just tied them, or what?
No, I quilted by hand. And then when my aunt told me about this, I thought, well, okay, well, I got to see how this really works. So I found a long arm quilter. I asked at the quilt shops and I brought my quilt to the long arm quilter. And every step of the way, I was disappointed. I wanted
Mm,
more. I felt I worked hard on this top and I didn't feel that it was getting, or myself, the attention it deserves. So right then and there, I decided, well, that's the number one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pay attention to the quilter and I'm going to pay attention to their top.
hmm,
And when it came back, it was okay, but I was not impressed.
gotcha. So the question was if you had gotten your machine strictly for business purposes.
I did right from the get-go.
Hmm. Okay.
And when you started, did you have any idea whether there was enough business in your area to?
No clue. No clue. I just knew what I was going to do whatever it took. I've got a can-do attitude about most things in life, but I knew that it was going to be a big learning curve for me. And I got a telephone book and a color crayon, and I started drawing in the telephone book, and I was going to get better at what I was doing. And I had four kids, so I was going to sports events with my telephone book and drawing, and I just got better at it.
What ages were your kids when you were starting your business?
Oh, the youngest one was just going into preschool, and so he was little. And so the kids would I would run kids in the morning to school, breakfast, lunch, that kind of stuff. And then I'd quilt all day. And then I'd go and pick them up and we would do the after school things. And then I'd quilt again at night. And all I could think of was, I just want to get back down in the basement because I was having so much fun. And my first customers were all my relatives.
Tell us about how it grew. That was your first customers, but that didn't stay that way.
No, getting customers was hard because nobody knew who I was. So I joined a whole bunch of guilds and I went to all the quilt shops and they usually had like quilters night out. So I would go to the quilters night out and I would sew my binding on by hand. I'd already done it on the machine. I'd sew it on by hand. Everybody wants to see your quilt. So you hold it up and you tell them you quilted it. I took my binding off. I went to the next guild and I sewed it on by hand again. And I did that until somebody that was at a couple of them said, you're really slow with that hand sewing. So I decided, okay, I can't do this by myself. So I got a frontman. I had a friend who had recently retired and she really liked to quilt. And I said, I got a deal. I will quilt all of your quilts if you join these guilds and you join these quarter-inch club or whatever it might be, and you go and talk about the fact that you brought your quilt to me. And she said, well, I can do that. And it forced her to get out. She met a bunch of people. She loved quilting. And it was amazing how fast the business increased because I wasn't promoting myself. I had somebody else promoting me, showing my work on their quilts.
Hmm.
And because one of the guilds I joined, there was like 12 long armors, and they were all trying to do the same thing I was, getting customers. And so people were kind of not listening to them. But when my friend Jan showed up with her cool stuff, uh, it was pretty cool.
Hmm.
And that's how I started getting customers.
Hmm. Were you working any other job at that time? It sounds like this was your only job because if you're doing it before you drop the kids off at school and then all day and then at night.
I was a professional mom, took my job seriously, and we did all the fun stuff. At the time, I was married to somebody, and the money was not an issue. Things changed, and I needed to support my children on my own without any support. And then I kind of shifted how I did business because I had to start supporting myself and children instead of paying for flowers for the garden and an expensive dance studio.
Mm.
And for the people watching or listening, the timeline, you said prior to this you'd worked corporately
Yes, I was a
and then
corporate
you
employee and I
yeah,
had
tell
quit.
us that timeline, you working
Oh,
corporately and
I worked corporate stuff until I think I quit to stay home in 94 because my third child was born and he had some health issues. So, and daycare just, it was too much. And so I thought, well, I'm going to find something else.
Hmm.
And I didn't really need the money until later. And
Hmm.
2000 is when I started quilting and trying. I knew I was going to do a business and I had to figure out how I was going to make more money.
Hmm.
Uh,
So with your first machine, how many years, if you remember, how many years did that machine carry you before you needed a second machine?
I got my first machine in 2000. I added a Statler to it in 2006 because I could run down, load a quilt, make it run, run up, do a load of laundry, put breakfast on the table, run down, advance the quilt. So I was using it to quilt more.
Hmm.
I got my second machine in, I think it was 2010 because I had more business than I could handle and I wanted to make more money.
Hmm.
And at that point, I was doing more custom. I did travel with Mary Reinhardt, who wrote a machine program for running the business side of long arm quilting. And so I was traveling to the big shows and I was taking the classes from the best of the best. And as I told people in my classes, I would write down everything I did and I would pick 5 things that I would go home and use on a quilt within the first 2 weeks. Because if I didn't use it, I'd lose it.
Hmm.
And education is what catapulted my skills,
Mhm.
but I
And
had to
that
use it.
that sounds like a key thing.
It is. It truly is.
That education is what catapulted your skills. That's a we need to write that quote down.
Mhm.
Um,
It's true
I do have
because I
one
learned so
question,
much.
another question that Joan is asking, which you already alluded to. Ask if you started with edge to edge or custom.
I wanted to do both only because I had so many ideas. And so I was doing both. I did three hole panographs and I didn't like that. So I moved to the other side. And by drawing, I would learn how to do more custom. Like one quilt was a mermaid quilt. So I got a little mermaid coloring book and I started trying to trace or draw. Mine ended up looking more like Barbie than Little Mermaid, but that's okay. And so I was doing custom. When the custom really kicked off is when I went to the Statler because, um, and it was a learning curve. I had to learn the computer and all that. I started with precision stitch
Mhm.
and I had fun with it. But when Creative Studio came along, it was another game changer. I could really visualize things and do a lot more custom quilting.
You've seen a lot of improvements in software over the years,
Yep.
and that's one of the questions that we get to later. But I would like to point out that all the software updates to your machines, even the oldest machines, Gammill doesn't charge for software updates, and
Oh,
so
no. And
that
there
allows
are
you to
other
have.
brands that do, and I'm very lucky I bought the right machine up front.
Yeah, you are. Um, so, uh, tell me about. Uh, well, one quick question. Because your first machine, we know how you got that one, and then 4 years later, you needed to, after you got the Statler on there, 4 years later, you needed a second machine, something like that. Um, did you ever need to finance any of your machines, or was it all just kind of the prior machines paid for the next machines?
Well, because I was in the house, I could turn around my profits back into the business without having to pay for electricity or rent or all that kind of stuff. And what I started doing is more thread, because is three greens enough? No, you need 26. I now have 900 colors of thread. And so I have options. I started with one roll of backing, and when you sell it, you get enough money to buy two. And so I did put money back into my business. And I did set aside every month money. I used to do it for a car, but I'd rather have a Gammill than a new car now. But I would set aside a certain amount every month. And I got to the point where I could buy half a machine. And then I got the other half from my mother, which I paid her back. Um, and I think she gave it to my kids, honestly, when it when it came right down to it, but I did pay her back. And I continued to set more aside. So the second machine I did borrow money for, but the third, fourth, and fifth, I had set aside every step of the way.
Mhm.
And the fourth and fifth came very quickly because I could see that I really had the business.
Mhm.
And by learning more, the quality of everything I did went up. And
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 when you
I mean,
first
there's more to getting the customers, but you got to keep them.
when you first started, as opposed to now, were you able to, or how many hours did you put in, like in the beginning versus now, or has there
Oh,
been
I
any
do
change
much
in
more
that?
now. I'm not running kids around. I love this though. This isn't work. Other my friends are all retiring and they're coming and hanging out here.
Well,
It's
I didn't say hours of work, because I know it's not work for you.
I'm here 7 days a week. But if I need to take off, I can now. I
Hmm.
just did a cruise. I do other things. And if you hit a quilt show while you're traveling around, it's part of my continuing education. It's written into my job description that I must have 48 hours a year of continuing education. I I blow that out of the water, of course. But then when you own your own business and you're traveling and looking at quilts and stopping at shops, that's a business write-off too.
Hmm. Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, give us an idea about the market there in Eagan, Minnesota. What's the per inch rate for edge to edge quilting and custom quilting? I
Uh,
know it varies depending on the quilt.
it does vary and it will, depending on your area. I'm in a major metropolitan area and my quilts are about $30 a square yard. Now, I don't go per square inch. I never did. Most of the competition was square inch, but I didn't care. I wanted other things to set me apart over price. I am on the low side of the market for this area. My $30 includes thread, batting, and setup. And I do carry 10 kinds of batting, so you can go up. You can go up. Most people buy the backing from me now. I have 300 over 350 wide backs and the 10 kinds of batting and the 900 colors of thread. And I'm getting new customers constantly. Uh, Quilters that have been in the area, I've always been very open to sharing my ideas and being helpful. If long armers came in and asked questions, I was very helpful. Plus, I taught. So I was, teaching at the local shows and things like that. And when they retire, they're referring to me. And so I'm still getting the word of mouth, not only from somebody that just found me, but somebody who's been in the business. I
Hmm.
also have a website. It's not a very good one, but it's a website. I always thought I was going to really get a really good website to draw all these customers in, but I don't need to anymore. They
Yeah.
just need to be able to find me.
Yep. For those who are curious, I did a little math on the back end, and $30 per square yard works out to about 2.3 cents per square inch if you're trying to do that math. And that seems reasonable in a metro area.
I'm on the lower side. I'm on the,
Yeah, there's
and
plenty of 2.5 cent or 3 cent.
yeah, and there are people who say, "Oh, I heard she's so expensive." Well, my high-end custom is on the high side. It is
Hmm.
not on the low side. And I have a list and people can get on that. And I'm out 2 years if you want to be on there. But if somebody comes in and they need something sooner, I can squeeze in. But those are the people that are working on that hand applique that's going to take them 5 years to make anyhow. So they get on my list now. Those quilts aren't even done.
Gotcha. So, can you give us an idea what your business does for revenue in a good year or in a bad year?
Well, I am this year I'm on track to do 250,000. And when it all comes down to the end, I don't really make too much because I put a lot of that back into the business. I now have a vehicle that the Quilting Page bought, and the Quilting Page, buys cell phones, and
Mhm.
obviously I need a
And it
new,
covers your travel expenses,
and it
as
covers
you
my
mentioned,
travel expenses, and obviously I need a new domestic machine to do the bindings on.
of
We
course.
are a full service. We do everything from your first baby quilt up to you want to go to Paducah. And we do binding and backings, and you found blocks that your grandma did in the attic, and we'll put them together in a top and finish it. I do a lot of vintage stuff as well.
Mhm.
And Paige, now versus when you started, how many quilts were you making like for in a year?
Oh, when I remember keeping track and saying, okay, I hit 100. And whoever the 100th person was, they got a gift certificate for, I can't remember what. It was $10 or something silly. And then it would be 700. And it got to the point that I was hitting those hundreds very quickly. As I added my machines, I mean, I could go back and tell you exactly how many quilts because I've got the records, but I am at 18,500 at this point.
In
And
total?
those total. And that doesn't include donation quilts or staff quilts.
Mhm.
Because,
That's just the invoice numbers.
yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Mhm.
And those have gone up faster all the time.
Yeah. So you've obviously, you don't run a business for 25 years without running into challenges. What's been the most challenging part for you? And I don't know if it's fair to say dealing with employees because a lot of our quilters who are looking at
They're
the
not looking at
they're
that.
not going to have employees. Let's pick something other than that.
Okay, I got the answer for you. It is being consistent, shaving off time over what you do, or finding a system that works. And like when I first started, I wanted to load faster. So I started tracking my movements and saying, I'm always going to do this. I'm always going to do that. I turned into a robot. Very much like you talk about muscle memory for learning the designs that you draw. I was making a system for how I loaded the quilts. So I do that over and over. And I will sit down and evaluate like where my bobbin station is and how my thread is stored and how my batting's stored. And I'm constantly doing that to make things more efficient. And I think that's something that somebody that, unless they were in a business other than this, maybe doesn't cross their mind. How
Hmm.
do I store all this batting? How do we make um, binding from leftover fabrics. So you have to store it and you have to figure out pricing and all that. And those are all things that you need to overcome. Pricing was a big one. But by taking it into steps, it becomes easier. But you have to figure out how you're going to get there. My intake process was something I overhauled. Uh, I've done overhauled that several times. I
so
used to
you
have a
think
big old book
you
and
think
they'd let people look at it.
e
No, too much time.
efficiency is a key thing you would you say for the somebody who is starting out?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Use the same movements. And have all your tools, have duplicate tools, have them the same spot all the time.
Hmm.
For most people, From the height that they can reach up to where they can put their hand down, that's their most usable space. And things should be within 1 or 2 steps and a reach.
Hmm.
My machines have things hanging on them so that I have all my tools where I need them and all that kind of stuff. My intake is a process. We measure the top. We fold everything in quarters. I measure it with a long tape measure, so it's only half the quilt. And then I fold the tape measure in half, so I'm not trying to add or making a mistake in adding. And I measure the top. I fold the back in quarters, and I put that on top, so I know it's good. I then get a thread. And the last thing I do is the design process. I have all the details before I move to the computer. And I have put on our front counter a second monitor that shows I've got Creative Studio up and I have an intake project. And it has, well, I'm reading it right now. It's got geometric, feather, flower, leaf, animal, kids, curl, basics, circle, star, holidays, hearts, and we'll put them all together in the last one. So if I click on one of those groups, I may have 15 flowers showing, and those are the ones that I've used recently. So I can go in there. They can see it. We're not flipping through the book. And I pretty much show them what I think their quilt wants instead of going through letting them look at a million things. And we'll
Hmm.
talk about the quilt. On your quilt, I see, you know, there's some fish and some seashells and stuff like that. So I'll have a category over here that's nautical, and that's where I go first. So they're
So
not seeing all the other stuff.
what I hear you saying, and I don't want to try to boil it down to something that's too simplistic. So correct me if I'm wrong, but
Going,
what I hear you saying is that you have found that specifically intentional about the different steps and being maybe a little bit analytical about, wait a minute, this is something that I'm going to do on every single quilt. So how can I optimize this process? How can I perhaps spend less time with the customer and yet have it be quality time that gets us design that they're happy with that also doesn't waste an hour of my time, you know?
exactly. And
Yeah.
I give reasons for my suggestions. And I can read body language. If they don't like it, I'll say, can you give me a category you'd like to see? Or, do you want this to be floral? Do you want it to be geometric? And then we can go from there. But a lot of my customers now, they just wait and then they'll say, well, whatever you think. Okay. And the new ones will give me suggestions. And then they'll say, well, what do you think? And then I'll say, well, I just showed you what I thought, but it's your quilt. We can go in any direction you want. And they come back to my suggestions the majority of the time because I have 18,500 quilts worth of experience.
Hmm. I was going to ask you how many patterns are in your pattern catalog approximately?
Oh, I have for overall designs 10,000.
Uh-huh.
But I take a pattern and I take the leaves out and I put different leaves in. Or
Sure.
I will take a pattern that I purchase and change things up a bit so that they nest a little different and
Now,
so
for
they're a
somebody
little
who doesn't already own a Statler, I hear you say that, and I'm like, okay, so she's spending, 5 to 15 minutes to customize the pattern for this customer. Um, what? because people that don't have creative studio that have no idea what kind of time you're talking about there.
Well, this is something I have invested my time in because my time I spend today is an investment in my future. I took classes, I have pushed myself to learn it, and I can do that much quicker. And I'm not doing that design for one person. Chances are I'm going to use it over and over and over again because it works. Some designs, the centers of the leaves they got too much in there. So I'll clean it up a bit and they like it. The more you practice it, faster you get at it, and the better the end product is.
Hmm. Hmm.
Again, that's education. If you don't know how to do this stuff, education helps.
Hmm.
And then it's just practice.
And
Football
I'm
games are not won on game day, they're won on the practice field.
there you go. Football games are not won on game day. Yep. Now, I'm assuming that you have all your machines logged into the same account and they all share the same group of patterns.
Well, actually, I screwed it up pretty bad when I first started because when I was saving my designs, I would make a change and save it, make a change and save it, and I'd end up with like 5 or 6 of one design with subtle changes. And I was syncing them all up to the cloud. So I have to go in and clean that up. But I do a lot of um, putting things on a stick. So if I make a change, I think I have 3 sticks that I use that I put those on, and then they go around to the different machines and they'll upload whatever is new, and it might be 5, 10 different designs. And then I use sort by newest first. So when it does come in and I say I just changed this catch a falling star pattern, I can type it in and I may have 3 others in there. And that point, I can delete out the old ones because I know the one on the top is good. But that
Mm-hmm.
was a mistake I made right from the get-go by not learning how to use the cloud like I should have. But I do, from my main desktop, I go up and down to the cloud now, and I still am cleaning up the cloud.
Hmm. Yeah, when you got a lot of patterns in there, it can take a while to get mistakes
Yeah.
cleaned up. Um, so with building this business, your mom came to mind right away because this question is, who was your biggest cheerleader and support system as you built your business?
Well, when I started, it was my Aunt Alice because she was convinced that this was something I could do and I could work from home, have the kids, and still feel like I was doing something. Um, because I needed more than just being a stay-at-home mom. I wanted more. And this fed my creativity. Uh, the overall designs pay my bills, but the custom stuff feeds my soul and my purpose. And because of what I do and the wonderful gifts that were given to me with my talents and my enthusiasm, I can go out and do things for my community. We do a bunch of donation quilts here, and I've been doing that for several years, but it's ticked up a bit. And uh, we have done about 100 a year for several years, and I'm at 57 by the end of April here. So this year is going to go way up,
Hmm.
and those all go out um, to needy organizations in the local area, the Twin Cities area. I
That's
was
awesome.
I was a regional coordinator for Quilts of Valor for a number of years, and we tried to keep those quilts local too. But then I shifted and I found different charitable organizations. We're doing a
Mhm.
lot with Sleep in Heavenly Peace. They make beds for kids without beds. And so we give them a lot of quilts. There is another organization that is for young adults that have been forced out of foster care or grown out of it. Let's put it that way. So it's 18 to 26, I believe, and they have a place to live, and we give each one of them a quilt. There's another group here that I always screw up the name. It's Avibo or something. They make little houses in giant warehouses for homeless shelters. Uh, in lieu of a homeless shelter, they get a little box that has a toilet, a sink, a bed, so they can have privacy. And then they have a common area. We give a lot of quilts to them and the vet's home and Quilts of Valor still too.
That's amazing. That's a big part of what drives you, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's my ministry. I give back that way. And that's what a lot of the people come in here on weekends. That's what I'm doing on the weekends. We're
Hmm.
we're quilting the tops. We found a close friend of mine passed away, and when people would bring in bags and bags full of fabric. My mother passed away, and she used to bring her quilt here. Will you take this? Yes. And so we were making quilts out of it. Not me. I wasn't piecing them. And then I decided I need to take how I think about things into that. So what we have now is when the bins come in, I have probably 50 different bins, and they're sorted by kid fabric colorways. And we'll get a pattern, and one of the village people, because we have a village that does this, they'll go around and select fabrics and make kits and even pre-cut many of the kits. So I've got a bend over there. If I could show, where is it? See those bends on the table?
Yeah.
Those are all pre-kitted, pre-cut kits. And my better customers, I give them a kit and they bring them back or not because I don't care. I got so many. And a lady came in today and she says, "You got to quit giving me these kits because you're not making any money. I'm not bringing you my stuff anymore." And she gave me $500 to go towards the donation backings. It just works.
Hmm. A lot of people with big hearts.
Yeah. Mm.
We had a guest who's watching who had a question. Her name is Holly. She was, I think the first question I can answer, she was asking when you have more than one Statler machine, do they all need their own computer or can they be linked and use different designs?
They're
And
all
the
the same.
answer there is they each have their own computer, but through the pattern cloud, they can share a common group of patterns. But if you
Yes.
design a new pattern on one of them, you'll need to hit the sync button to send it to the cloud account. And then on the other computer where you also want to maybe quote the same design, you have to hit the sync button again in order to bring it in. The other question she had, though, which I couldn't answer, was how many quilts do you generally do there on an average day, and how do you determine if the quilt is a donation quilt? Like, have you had people try to slip their own quilt under the radar?
Oh, no, people will come in, customers, and say, "Well, this is a donation quilt." And I'm very clear. I choose my donations. You get to choose yours. And if you want me to quilt it, there is no discount. You you have to, if it's for another donation, then that's fine. They can do that, but it's not my donation. The donation quilts are only run on the quilts on the weekends. I also allow the staff to run their own quilts on the weekends. And that's how they're learning because they want to do something custom and I'll show them how to do it. I generally do the pattern work and then I'll show them and they get to do it and then I'll say, "Yeah, do that 87 more times." And in the meantime, they're running a donation quilt on another quilt, on another frame, I mean.
Hmm.
So we're running 5 machines all day, every day. I have some people that come in at 7 a.m. and then I have some people that stay till 6 or 7. So we really can keep the machines running by staggering the staff hours.
Hmm.
And Paige, for someone who's watching who's not nearly as far along in the process as you are, um, what would you tell them if they ask what kind of impact the money and the control of your personal schedule has made in your life?
Oh, the Statler was phenomenal because I could multitask. The Statler's running and I'm doing something else. I'm dealing with a customer or putting binding on, or I do a lot of binding and I put it on by domestic machine. And if you're a night owl, quilt at night. That's okay. I mean, I was used to get up really early just so I could get to the machine. And because that's all I think about is that that's where I want to go back. You do have control, and the Statler is like another employee. It's going to work, and you can sit and have a cup of coffee and practice changing a design, practice playing with the nodes and doing all that stuff. Um, and you can schedule out. I used to on my calendar put, well, we had a Boy Scout trip or there was a dance recital. And so I knew I'm not going to take any quilts that have to be done right before the end of the year dance recital because Sammy was in 5 shows and 8 numbers and I'm doing costumes. So you can adjust it.
Hmm. And that's
And I
what you
don't have the
did.
kids anymore. So,
There's nothing to get in between you and your quilting. So, is there, is there any part of this that was kind of a surprise to you and that you really wish somebody would have warned you about before you got started in the quilting business?
um, some of the costs of taking your business out of the home, that I didn't really consider all that. Like, whereas we had insurance at home and we had an umbrella that covered machines and things like that, but you need more insurance. And then when you start having people come in, you need riders on that. And hiring staff, I use a third party um, payroll system. It's Gusto.
Mhm.
But they handle all the taxes. And tried doing some of that, and that was difficult. So I found I leave it to the professionals.
Are there times that you long for those days when you had two machines in your basement and no employees?
No, no,
No, it's worth
uh-uh.
it.
Because I have so many more friends now, and people will stop in, and if you're gonna chat, you chat. And the machine will run. And if it stops, I'll say, well, come over here. And they'll come over and they'll do it. But a lot of my friends now they've come in and they've taken classes. When they first start, they got to pay me to like rent my machine and take classes, learn how to do this. But they'll come in and they'll run donation quilts and then toss in one of their own, or It's not unusual on any given weekend that whoever was here doing donation quilts loads one of my money quilts on Sunday afternoon so that when we hit the ground running on Monday, we just all take care of each other.
Mm.
Hmm.
You've got a neat little community going on there.
Oh, yeah, I got a hen house. Except we got two guys now. We got two guys in our hen house.
Um, so we've gotten to question number 24, the end of the list.
Okay.
So it has been now 25 years since you started this crazy quilting business, and that was when you got your first Gammill. Um, what advice would you give to somebody who has heard your story and she thinks, well, I'll probably never have five machines, but I want to try this? What advice would you give her?
You don't need five. Get to where you want to be and be comfortable with it. I keep thinking, oh, the next thing I could bump out this wall and add some more, but I don't need to. I'm at a point where I'm happy, I'm comfortable, I'm making an impact on the friends that I have, and together we're all making an impact in the community and helping out there. You gotta try it, and it is scary. And one of the scariest things is actually talking to people. Um, Getting past that, I found a customer in the checkout line at the grocery store. Have your business cards on you at all times. She picked up a magazine and said, "Oh, this looks like a quilt." And so you know, I talked to her.
Oh, are you a quilter? Well, yes, I am.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, you just got to walk through the fear. Walk through the fear. Moving out of the house was the biggest, scariest thing for me. And honestly, Karen McTavish, who's a very well-known quilter from Minnesota, I used to meet her in the airport all the time, going to different shows. And so I went up to visit her in Duluth, and I said, she had a storefront, and I said, I'm thinking of doing the same thing. And she said, it's scary, isn't it? And I said, oh, it's really scary. And she said, you just got to walk through that fire, just get out the other end. And it's like, okay, if if you know you can do it, you can quilt, you can do a quality product, just jump in there and do it. And a lot of people buy these machines thinking I'm going to run a business, and they get to the point where they paid it off, and then they say, no, it's just for me and my friends. And if that's where you want to be, that's fine. I just kept pushing myself because I was having way too much fun.
Yeah, you got to do what makes you happy.
Mhm.
Life is too short.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Paige, I think we have gotten countless nuggets of wisdom from you in our visiting
I
this
talk a
evening.
lot.
We so much appreciate it. We really do. Um,
If people would like to check out your website, sad though it is, or see you on Facebook or whatever, where would they where would they catch up with you?
Okay, I am the quilting page. So you can go to the quiltingpage.com. Page is Page. It is my name. My dad named my business. He said, well, you are the quilting page. What else would you call it?
Hmm.
Okay. So I have a business. I'm in Facebook. You can find me. I'm on the Statler Facebook quite a bit. I do have some patterns on the pattern cloud. If you have questions or want something, call me up. I I live and breathe this stuff. I can drive down the road and talk to you about quilting. It's fun.
Hmm.
And people do stop in.
Yeah. Well, I've been to your shop, I believe, twice. I know the first time and maybe the second time too. There was one of your machines that needed professional attention,
Yep.
and hopefully I'll get back there again sometime when the weather's good. It's not always great.
Yeah. Well, it's Minnesota, you can put more clothes on. It's not that bad. And
Um,
I've talked to Bobby so many times on the phone. I love your videos that you guys do because I can fix a lot of the stuff myself. And I do a routine maintenance usually once a year
mhm.
because the
Your
game,
machines are busy. Yes.
I have Statler, Stewie, Stella, Stormy, and Optimus Prime.
I love that.
Those are her machine names in case anybody missed that.
Yep, they have
Um,
name tags too.
Well, Paige, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure to do the interview with you, and
Yes.
we'll have it. Obviously, a lot of people were not here for the live, so it'll be within a few days. We'll have it up on YouTube and somewhere else. Paige, if you are speaking with somebody and they don't know where to find it, they can go onto YouTube and they can search Quilting Business Success, or if they know how podcasts work uh, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever platform they happen to be using, they can use that same search, which is Quilting Business Success. So, thank
Okay.
you so much for joining us.
Oh, well, thank
Yeah.
you so much for having me. This was a pleasure, and I just came off the cruise. I loved that. I haven't been teaching on a national scale for a while, and it, it was kind of like a relapse. I loved it so much.
Mhm.
It was good to go
We
back
were
and do.
talking before we got started how much fun it is when somebody's in a class and sometimes the class is t teaching a concept and you give them the example and then you walk them through it again and you walk it through it again and the fourth time through the light bulb goes off and they're like, oh, I get it. And you realize, okay, their life has been changed forever now that they know how to concatenate a pattern or something.
Yep, it's
So,
amazing. The
yeah,
classes, take classes.
yep,
That's all I can say.
yep. Awesome, cool. Well, we will see you all back in 2 weeks for the next Quilting Business Success. Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.